All right, are we good to go? Are we all here? Oh, we're being recorded, we're good? Okay. Welcome to the, what is the date? June 17th, Housing and Community Development Committee. I believe we do have a quorum, but we'll, if we could roll call in for the record.
Chair Burns.
I am here.
Councilmember Isles.
Here.
Councilmember Heracadis.
Here.
Fran Sweeney.
Here.
Chloe Thurston.
Here.
Joanne Salome.
Here.
We have quorum present.
Thank you. And do we have any members participating remotely or virtually? Is the answer no?
I see Matt Rogers. I'm going to be updating him to panelist.
Okay, and we now require that members who would like to participate remotely that they disclose why, and then we'll vote to allow them to participate remotely. So, Councilmember Rogers, can you hear us? Do you intend?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Do you intend to participate remotely?
I do intend to participate remotely. I am in Ohio for a family funeral today.
And we don't have core counsel with us, do we?
My understanding is that I can participate but not vote on any issues.
Oh yeah,
from
you
their
can always. One of the eligible reasons, though, to vote, my understanding is that it has to be work related, which sounds terrible based on what you just said. But I think that is the rules.
I think there might be.
That's what Corporation Counsel has advised me. So I will not be participating in any votes this evening.
Okay. But yeah, definitely, you can always participate, though. Okay. All right, we got that cleared up. Next is, I don't know how to handle this. So it says public input on amended citizen participation plan.
Could we get a motion to
We need a motion for that?
Yeah.
If somebody can, I'll entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the citizen participation plan.
I'm sorry, motion to approve remote participation.
Oh no, he's not participating. He's not exempt. There's certain reasons that can allow a member to participate remotely. He's not exercising one of those at this time because it's a family related. But he's going to participate, as in he's going to do everything but vote. I think is what he plans to do, which is fine. I believe that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
It says there's a motion, but it says that it needs to be.
Yeah, if he was going to be a voting member, if his expectation was that he was going to participate remotely and be a voting member, then he would need to disclose why. It would need to be one of the eligible reasons as defined in state statute. But he doesn't intend to do that, so we can go to number 3. Councilmember Heracadis, I think you were making a motion.
Yes. So my computer.
We don't need motions for public comments.
Oh, we don't need. Okay, no. I thought that's what we needed it for. Okay, so what is number 3 then? Is it just an opportunity for people to?
So it's public input on the first on the amended citizen participation plan. So it's public input on proposed updates to the citizen participation plan, which guides how the city engages with residents in key planning processes that come to this committee.
So do we have to open up 3 and 4 one at a time? Can we do them?
Yes.
Okay, so we are now in. Does anybody want to provide input on the amended citizen participation plan, either in person or remotely? Okay, is that sufficient? Okay,
That's sufficient.
And then number 4, same thing.
So now it would be public input on the 2025 to 2029 consolidated plan and 2025 action plan. And this is an opportunity for the public to weigh in on the draft consolidated plan and the 2025 action plan, which outlines Evanston's strategic use of federal housing and community development funds.
Okay, would anybody like to provide public input at this time? Yes.
So, sorry, I spaced out briefly. This is about the comprehensive plan draft?
No, this is consolidated plan.
Sorry.
Okay. No worries. All right, seeing none, then we will go to public comment. So would anybody like to make public comment today?
We have actually three online signups.
Okay.
Is Scott Roberts present?
How long is
It's 5 minutes, I believe.
5 minutes?
Is it?
Is this public comment?
Yes, there's regular public comment.
5 minutes is long.
Or is
I
it-
won't go 5 minutes. You can go. I wasn't prepared for 5 minutes. But there's supposed to be 15 minutes total, so I think it's just divided up.
Yeah, but you can continue, yeah.
Okay. Hello. Thanks. Thank you. Committee, my name is Scott Roberts. I'm a resident of the 3rd Ward, and I'm here to talk about the comprehensive plan, and most specifically the housing section and Action H 2.1, which currently reads as preserve and increase Evanston's diverse housing choices. A comprehensive plan is meant to work alongside revision of the zoning code and to provide guidance to a group such as the Land Use Commission as to choices about changes about the zoning and how it is set up across the city. It isn't a binding document, it's not a law, but it helps guide the law imposed by the Land Use Commission in our case. Because of that purpose, it's important that it's clear and it gives direction to Land Use Commission about what the overall goals and strategy of the city are going forward. Zoning itself is very controversial, and as we saw when this came through Land Use Commission, if anybody has attended any of those meetings, there was a lot of angry feedback and a small minority that made it very politically difficult and put a lot of political pressure on an unelected group. In my mind, what happened in the course of their discussions is that political pressure basically wiped out all real guidance in this section. The first draft of the action, in the first draft of E45, read as allow housing types such as townhomes, small flats, and cottage clusters by right in all neighborhoods, and a range of higher density housing options in centers and along corridors. That was whittled down over time to preserve and increase Evanston's diverse housing choices. That is a sentence that doesn't really tell us much, and it could be used to justify a wide range of decisions. In some people's minds, it's almost contradictory, including members of the Land Use Commission during one meeting questioned how isn't this contradictory to preserve and increase. It was explained there is a justification for that, but it still is confusing, and I think that this should have more direction to Land Use Commission. This is especially true because when these controversial decisions happen in Land Use Commission about the zoning, the eventual approval is going to come to City Council itself. We're going to have to make that tough decision. And it really is much more City Council's job to take on those hard decisions rather than a group of unelected citizens who are just there unpaid and volunteer. So what I would recommend, what I'm hoping that City Council will do, and that this group might influence City Council, is to change this, the action of H2.1 to something that gives more direction to City Council, and then that gives more direction to Land Use Commission as they move forward through zoning. I have some examples which I'll provide to the committee, but they don't go as far as the original draft, which a lot of people, it did raise people's They became alarmed because they had the specter of these giant structures, and it was a little bit unlimited. What I would encourage is something a little bit more constrained. Through discussions with a wide range of people around the community on both sides, most people are very comfortable with something along the lines of a duplex, and especially if it stays in the same size as a single-family home. We have many examples of that around Evanston, including my house, which is a double house, where many of them you can't even tell them from a single-family home. And in fact, the book that just came out this spring about the double houses is called Hidden in Plain Sight, because you don't see them around. So the language that I would encourage is a little bit more, not quite as specific, but urges the Land Use Commission to increase the choices, but keep it within a size that fits the neighborhood. So an example would be increase Evanston's diverse housing choices by allowing a mix of house-scale residences that retain the character of the neighborhood. Support neighborhood-scale housing. This is another one. Support neighborhood-scale housing variety by permitting multiple dwellings and structures that observe current single-dwelling bulk standards and respect prevailing housing scale. Allow small missing middle housing forms that complement single-family homes by right, provided they fit the prevailing height, FAR, and setback limits of the neighborhood. And lastly, allow small-scale residential structures with up to 3 principal dwellings when the building meets the same height, setback, and lot coverage standards that govern detached houses. The reason why I include 3 principal dwellings here is because if you would have a duplex and an ADU, that could allow for 3. But really, I think what people are most concerned about with the zoning change is that it fits in the neighborhood, it doesn't become this giant structure, and that it doesn't disturb our neighbors. But what we really want to do is allow for more, not necessarily affordable housing, but more affordable housing, like my double house, which allowed me to move into my neighborhood, which I wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise. And that is, I also, on this, one of the objections or the reasons why the Land Use Commission said that they were changing the language is that there was some opinion that comprehensive plans shouldn't give specific guidance on towards zoning. And I have gathered examples from 6 different comprehensive plans from around the country, which do give specifics that shows that this is a standard practice. And I'll provide those to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you providing that by email, or are you passing something out today?
I have a couple copies, but I'll send it through email.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mary Rosinski.
Hi, Mary Rosinski. That was really interesting, and I have to say, I do agree he brought up some really good points that were not brought up in the original plan about keeping with the existing housing. I think part of the problem that caused so much consternation in this community is because the city tried to come out with zoning and a plan at the same time and raise the heights and density before anybody even had the strategic housing plan together, and it just was not a well thought out. We have like 5 or 6 different plans that the community is supposed to be weighing in on this month alone. And I think hopefully someone somewhere in the city will say there is usually a strategic way to lay one plan on top of another so we don't have that problem of people talking about what they don't really have an idea on. Because the original zoning came out, as you probably all know, with 4 units here, R4 going to 65 feet from 30, the campus area going up to 135 feet, different areas all around, no T-zones, no anything. So there wasn't just a small group. People all over this city were concerned about who's pushing this. One thing I did want to talk about in addition is There is still that misconception that density will create affordable housing. And I have 1,800 comments that I FOIA'd from the city and put into a spreadsheet I'm happy to share with you. And those are from the pocket meetings that they had around the community. And I will tell you, not one of those 1,800 comments, and they're from, I think from what I can tell, they break them down into wards, even mentioned anything about creating more density. Now, not that we can't use more density in certain areas, but it should also be strategic. And I would hope that we would pass our strategic housing plan before we start talking about how we're going to get affordable housing. And now that goes to my next point. I'm concerned about this concept that we need more in our plan about affordable housing for aging in place. And as part of the Evanston Action Committee, I know we were talking about this today, that, let me see if I can find what someone sent to me, sorry. Well, here's the idea of it, is that when we have in the comprehensive plan, we talk about the need for improving our housing. We have a lot of housing that's out of date, infrastructure's going down. But when people improve their houses, then their property taxes go up. Now, we have a historic tax credit for people who fix their houses, and it freezes it. And what we're talking about is let's find solutions so that people can age in place and also get maybe a tax freeze for improving their houses, so that they don't have to worry that their tax bill, because they pulled a permit, is going to go up higher. So we're looking for solutions to help people stay here. Evanston is a difficult city to stay in as you get older if you have fixed incomes. And I know there's a senior freeze, but quite frankly, even the senior freeze doesn't really cut it if a lot of people have mortgages and other things going on. So my point is, when you're talking about your strategic housing, think about how we can really have housing in place. Second of all, what's missing, and I'll finish talking, is a city has to invest in affordable housing. There's no way that building new housing is going to create affordability workforce housing without investment from the public. So that's basically what I have to say. Thank you for being here, listening, and I'll look forward to this discussion.
To Lowellback.
Try this again. So I'm Sue Lulbach with Connections for the Homeless. I did share a document that I believe you guys received, sent it to Marion, summarizing our feedback on the comprehensive plan. And that feedback came from a fairly large group of community members that participate in our program, Joining Forces for Affordable Housing. One of the things we really noticed and that we want to emphasize is that we know that increasing the amount of affordable housing is a goal of the city. We know that that came across as a priority in Envision Evanston, it came across as a priority in the city's E-plan. It comes up as a priority in everything. And it is not really explicitly stated as a priority in the comprehensive plan anymore. And so the feedback that we provided, and I'm not going to go through it right now in detail, it's in that document. It talks about increasing and preserving our diverse housing stock. That does not necessarily have anything to do with affordability. And so what we have found throughout the comprehensive plan, there are euphemisms being used that could apply to affordable housing, but don't literally apply to affordable housing. And with this document needing to be a guiding document for the next 20 years, and with affordable housing being a priority and a huge need as documented in the comprehensive plan, we are asking for changes to the language that make it an explicit priority, both an increase in affordable housing and an increase in housing supply, not just in diversity of housing. Thank you.
Anybody else? That's all? Okay.
No more public comments.
All right, thank you.
Chair Burns?
Yes.
Just so you know, Marion Johnson is on the call. She's
Okay.
just had to join remotely today.
Okay, perfect, good to know. All right, next up, we have 6A, approval of meeting minutes from April 15th. If I can have a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
All right, it's
Second.
been moved and seconded. Are there any changes? All right, all those in favor say aye of approving minutes.
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes. Any abstentions? All right, we have approved minutes. Next up is 7A, nominating a vice chair.
Yes, so we will nominate and vote for a new vice chair for the Housing and Community Development Committee. This leadership role supports meeting facilitation in the absence of the chair. We do have one nominee for vice chair, which is Joanne Salome. Joanne has confirmed her interest in continuing being the chair, the vice chair for this committee. So
Okay, can somebody make that motion?
I will make the motion to nominate Joanne Zalomi as our vice chair.
A second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, we have a vice chair. Thank you for your service. All right, 7B, Evanston Green Homes pilot update for action. If somebody can make a motion.
I will open, what's the correct, we're not voting on anything, so
Place and file. That's what it says.
I'll make a motion to accept and place on file the Evanston Green Homes pilot update.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and now for presentation. All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kara Pratt. I'm the city's Sustainability and Resilience Manager, and I'm joined here by my colleague at the Center for Neighborhood Technology, Miriam Savid, who will give a presentation about the Evanston Green Homes pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is. Fantastic. Good evening. My name is Miriam Savitt. As Kara mentioned, I'm the Chief Strategy and Program Officer with the Center for Neighborhood Technology. You may have met previous colleagues of mine before. It's my first time here, so thanks for having me. Let's see, so does this work? Oh, it does, amazing. Okay. So I'm just going to give a little overview as a kind of a reminder and a refresher on what this program is. I'll give you an update on where we are and just a reminder of who the partners are. So as a reminder, this is a pilot program. It's funded from $1 million in ARPA funding. It's a pilot focused on improving energy efficiency, climate resilience, improving overall health of buildings, and it's meant to overall improve climate resiliency and equity, and improve and support long-term affordability of housing in Evanston. And last time we were here was in, I believe last fall. So we hadn't actually gotten underway with construction, so we're excited to share some good updates with you all today. Last time, a lot of the work that we've been doing up until the construction process has been creating some of the policies and procedures to establish sort of the framework of the program. We've created an operations guide in conjunction with our partner Elevate, as well as with partners at the city. And we've done a fair amount of outreach so far to get to the point where we're actually able to get homes and rental properties enrolled. So we've convened an advisory group in 2023. We've had a series of focus groups and communication. So that's sort of all the groundwork that we've been doing the past several years to where we are now. There has been some change in the original sort of partnership and roles of the program. EDC was one of the original sort of key partners. So Elevate has stepped in to take on more of the role regarding construction and contracting, in addition to doing sort of the building assessments and providing support on the QA/QC. So they're sort of our main partner on the ground working both with property owners, with renters, as well as with the contractors, and there really are experts on sort of building efficiency and energy efficiency. Center for Neighborhood Technology, we are sort of the main administrators of the program. We've helped convene the advisory group, supporting overall design, and will overall provide recommendations for sort of the pilot and next steps after this program concludes at the end of this year. So key updates. I'm excited to share we've made some great progress in construction. It's always nice to have some before and after photos. These are before and after, so there's some upgrades you can see from the water heaters here. So overall, we've done 4 properties so far that have completed construction. We had a great press event the other month along with the city. Right now, every permit that has been applied to, we've received, which is great. Construction is starting about a week after permits have been received. Construction varies. It can be 2 to 7 weeks is what we've seen so far. There's some variability in terms of what the upgrades are per building. So there's an assessment done for each building. And the focus is overall on energy savings long-term for both who lives there, as well as just energy efficiency overall. And whenever possible, we're trying to do electrification. So we've been able to do partial electrification in several properties, and one we've actually done full electrification, which is great, so completely overhauling that property. We have encountered a fair amount of safety concerns as well. Some properties have needed mold mitigation. Others have required more safety and weather stripping as well. So we've seen some increases in terms of the type of work that's necessary before even doing energy efficiency work. For ones that have undergone electrification, we've done full overhauls of the electrical panel and full upgrades for those as well. So the pilot includes a variety of housing types, includes single-family homes, and sorry, this is hard to see, but and it also includes 2 to 4 flats, as well as multifamily properties. So there's a diverse array of housing types within each. There's some of the homes are owner-occupied, and we also have several rental properties as well. We'll share more of this at the end of the program when we have lessons learned, but I'll just give you kind of a highlight on some of the takeaways so far, is that we have seen a fair amount of deferred maintenance, particularly in the single-family properties as well as the 2 to 4 flats. There's, as I mentioned, additional sort of health and safety needs that are required. So it's hard to do roofing insulation when you have sort of critical issues that you might need to address first. So those are things that we've are trying to add and mitigate, as well as seeing the energy efficiency upgrades. We're also trying to layer in additional funding when we can. Elevate is working closely with CETA to do that when possible. There's just fewer opportunities that we're seeing in single-family homes. Unlike multifamily, there's more funding opportunities available. So there are some limitations with the single-family homes. When we've encountered, so 2 and 4 flats are pretty similar as well in terms of the sort of commonalities we're seeing with single-family homes. There are just greater construction costs and just some obstacles to decarbonization when we're dealing with sort of other safety issues and weatherization issues that we need to tackle first. And then on sort of the administrative side of things, when we're dealing with the owner directly, it is just faster is what we're seeing overall. So there's some additional layers when we're working with the renters to ensure long-term affordability. We need to check rents and leases and lease terms. There's sort of all of this is part of the standard 3-party agreement that gets signed when they become part of the pilot to ensure long-term affordability. And there's just longer delays that we're seeing in getting getting these buildings enrolled when we're dealing with renter-occupied units. Similarly, so multifamily, we have had a harder time enrolling multifamily buildings. We have seen less deferred maintenance in these properties, which is good. However, some of the structural components of a multifamily property make it a little more difficult to do some of the upgrades. So a lot of them are run on boiler systems, baseboard heating systems. Those are much more expensive to upgrade overall and probably outside of the scale of the pilot. So those buildings aren't going to see full electrification. So we're doing what we can to ensure that we can still make the upgrades where there's still overall energy savings long-term, as well as energy efficiency upgrades. But this will be one of the things we can talk more about when we put our final report together about the type of dollars that might be needed for multifamily properties and what's necessary in terms of building systems. I'm jumping to money. So as one of the components of the pilot is that it is a pilot. It's just ARPA funding. ARPA funding's running out. We've been trying to fundraise to support both the pilot and think about what can happen long term. We're obviously dealing with a different funding landscape in this moment than we were when the pilot was conceived. C&T and Elevate have applied to several different funding sources even over the past year. One of our recent applications was to the Great Lakes Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Fund. We just recently learned that that funding is on pause and in litigation. So we're trying to stay optimistic, and we're still looking for additional funding sources. But the current environment does present a challenge to bring in additional funding at this time. So just sort of a summary of where we are right now, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you may have, is we have so far recruited 30 units. That's through 15 properties. The original goal was 14 properties. And so again, it's a mix of properties that we've single family, 2 flats, 4 flats, and multifamily. We have ended construction for 4 properties. We've got 10 more properties in the pipeline. 1 has a signed agreement. All of these have gone through complete assessments, and Elevate is handling the construction and the procurement process. Right now, we have a pipeline of 9 contractors. They're still looking to expand that. The majority of those are either MWDB certified or eligible to be certified. And again, construction is generally going smoothly, 2 to 7 weeks. And we're seeing that turnover. We've had some great success with the buildings that have been completed and have some great quotes, which we're happy to share. And the construction costs, as a reminder, it's coming from ARPA dollars, and then there is funding from the Good Neighbors Fund, which is offsetting some of the construction costs. So for those with that additional funding, we're able to make deeper investments in some of those properties. So yes, I think that's the quick summary of where we are. Happy to go deeper if anybody has any questions.
Any questions? Yeah, go ahead. You can go.
Thanks. This is really interesting, and I appreciate the details. I had a few questions. One was just, could you say a bit more about the recruitment, both in terms of properties themselves and then the contractors too? Like, what's the goal there? And then just the other question was, I was curious when you mentioned, because it's kind of a common situation, starting like one repair and then realizing there's a sort of cascade of other things that might need to be dealt with. And so how are they thinking about managing that from a sort of cost standpoint and kind of risk assessment standpoint?
Yeah, well, I'll try to answer the second question first. So Elevate does a complete assessment of what the building needs are, not just what could be eligible. So whoever lives, the homeowner will receive sort of the full assessment of what's necessary. They will work with their engineers to figure out sort of what, and they also look at current energy bills to figure out where the energy savings could be, but also what's sort of the order of operations, what needs to happen. So their building engineers will put together sort of what the recommended scope would be. And that's how they'll sort of tackle it, because there are criteria for the program. We can't just do safety upgrades if it's not leading to energy efficiency. So it's sort of putting that math together to figure out what we can accomplish under here. The Good Neighbors Fund allows us to do a little bit deeper, so that's been beneficial because there's a little less, the requirements are different than what they are under the ARPA funding. Minimally, though, the homeowner will be left with an assessment of additional upgrades that could take place, but we're focusing again on levels of efficiency and decarbonization to the extent we can. I'll do my best to answer the recruitment questions. I came in a little late to the program, so a lot of this predates me. Elevate we have a website that was created for recruitment. There's 2 key census tracts that were targeted in conjunction with city input to develop sort of who's suitable and who should we be recruiting for the program. So there's been a lot of specific outreach that Elevate has done specifically. In terms of contractors, I wish I could say more. That's something I'm happy to look into and follow up on. The goal is to provide, obviously we're using prevailing wages. The goal is to provide good opportunities, especially for smaller contractors and ones who live ideally locally. Elevate has a robust portfolio in energy efficiency, and I think has some contractors that they'll be able to draw on, but I'm happy to look into that if you have more specifics.
Yep, members home.
I just was wondering, how did these specific people learn about the program? You know?
Yeah, it's a good question. Kara, I don't know if you have more insight, but I know that there has been a fair amount of outreach and the website was created, but if you have more details.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I also can't speak about the specific participants, but I do know that Elevate attended several ward meetings, including, I think, from some of the council members present today, perhaps a year to 18 months ago, to start to socialize this. We pushed it out in the city newsletter quite a bit early on and really spread the word in presentations. But again, this would have been several months ago at this point. So it's also possible that word of mouth could have caught on among neighbors, but we can make a point to ask the participants exactly how they heard about the program.
And it's also my understanding there is a wait list, so I believe there's a fair amount of interest and demand in the program. So I can check on the numbers for that as well.
Yeah, so, yeah, I will kind of second well, first of all, thank you. This is really great to see that we're getting progress. It's awesome to see, that some of the projects are already completed. I think one thing I've been kind of hoping at when we get to the end of this project to have a playbook. We've had a really narrow focus of, 2 census tracts, and I've had a bunch of constituents very early on ask about the program who weren't in the census tract, and I think there's a community kind of demand for doing like energy efficiency work in homes, but a lot of folks don't know where to start. And so I think having a playbook and also kind of build off what Chloe mentioned, like also building capacity in local contractors and having that kind of grow so that there are multiple options for people to go to. One of the things I think, and this is kind of for Kara, just for something like as we look forward, I'm curious if we have a methodology for gathering data after we wrap up the projects, because I think it'd be really helpful for the narrative. Because when we were talking healthy buildings, everyone was saying like, this is so expensive, this is going to bankrupt us. And it's like, well, if you do strategic upgrades, you're actually going to save money in the long term. So I think, especially for homeowners who aren't flush with cash, I think it'd be really helpful to know like, oh, hey, this hot water heater, like we went, electric, this is what your return on investment. So that kind of data would really help the narrative, because like, as we're looking at climate action, we have had multiple discussions up here, and it's like our city buildings are just a very small fraction of the equation. And to get to where we need to get, we have to have everyone kind of, shifting, their changing habits and also making the upgrades, that they can. So I think that'd be super impactful for future, community use. And then I guess the other thing, while you're talking, we're talking strategic housing plan, affordable housing. I think, kind of for me, the next steps would be to look at how we can help, facilitate naturally occurring affordable housing. And this would make a lot of sense for the smaller to middle, landlords. Like if we had this narrative of like, you can do this to save X amount per month, we could do a similar expansion of the pilot. And it's something I think we should, this could help us out and figure out other problems too. So, but thank you for your work. So.
Yeah, I'll just add that the goal is for Elevate to look at energy bills a year after, so we can do full comparison and get real data. So the goal isn't just the projected energy savings, but confirming that we're getting what we've planned for. So that'll be something we can certainly use to demonstrate. And we have sort of their prediction of what the energy savings would be plus the cost savings. So we'll be able to bring both of those data points in.
And then I just have, maybe this is like too in the weeds details, but when you're doing electrification for like hot water heaters, are you are you going tankless, or are you using the just regular tank? Because I've heard like tankless, there's other equations that make it a little bit more
True. Yeah,
complicated.
no, we're using heat pump water heaters for those. So yeah, tankless is a whole other story. But yeah, heat pump water heaters if we're going full electric. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just, so you mentioned that you'll track energy bills, and I was wondering if you could also do usage, just because like the cost of energy could change, and then sort of we would want like a baseline, right, in terms
Yes.
of that can compare kind of like to like, just in case energy prices happen to spike.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. I guess I have probably one or two questions. So is the program over? There's still some funding left. Where are we? I probably missed that part. Where are we at?
We're expected to be done by the end of this year.
Okay.
So we're on track to finish all construction. So we can come back whenever you all would like to give
Perfect.
sort of a final update on the program and sort of our lessons learned, and hopefully to the extent we can give a roadmap or guidance on what can happen next, we'd be glad to do that.
And so you're good. You have all the participants you need. And at this point, until sometime in the next few months, you're just doing construction, basically.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that was really it. I wanted to make sure we would have another opportunity to get an update. So that's perfect. Okay. So we'll look forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Real quick, I raised my hand. I don't know if
sorry.
anybody's paying attention to me. That's okay. Have we given any thought to, I work for a church in Edgewater, and this week we're actually hosting a green and clean energy homes forum. Have we given any thought to doing that? What I'm hearing is like people want to get engaged, but they don't know how. And they're doing an event, the Edgewater Environmental Coalition, I think is the name of the group, is doing something where they'll actually be tabling people who can help people so you can gain resources yourself. And maybe that's sort of a next step to be working toward. But it's just something to keep in mind where, since we can only fit so many people through the program, if we can give people resources, I think Councilmember Harakaris is the one who was talking about people are like, where do I get started? How do I get involved and do things in my property? And so that's just an idea. And I'm willing to talk to anybody who wants to talk to me about that at a later date. Thanks.
I can provide an update on that, Councilmember Rogers. The city actually holds a contract with Climate Action Evanston to test a climate coaching program this year that sounds similar to what you mentioned in Edgewater. And so we are hoping to empower our nonprofit community to partner with us to help to spread the word on exactly that.
All right, thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have to vote. So all those in favor of accepting and placing the Evanston Green Homes pilot update on file, say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Any nays? All right. Next up, if I can have a motion for 7C. Actually, I don't even know if we need a motion for this. It's just discussion. Should we do a motion or discussion? Okay. So we have an update on the MTO Landlord Tenant Walk-in Hours Program pilot and NTO report. So it's the report as well. Okay.
So since it's two parts, we could start either with the discussion or with the report, however you want to.
Let's do the report first.
Report first. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Ana Elizarraga, and I am the Housing and Economic Development Analyst with Community Development. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the MTO Landlord Tenant Services reports from 2024 and 2025. We figured it would be a good time to bring up both years for all of our new members. So the Metropolitan Tenants Organization is a partner to the City of Evanston to provide landlord and tenants' rights assistance through different avenues, including a hotline and through requests through Evanston 311. So this is just a comparative summary that it's in the agenda of the 2024 and 2025 landlord-tenant service call reports. So call volume from 2024 January through May was 280 calls. And so far in 2025, in the same time frame, we're up to 182 calls. So it's a 35% decrease in total call volume for the same amount of time. But we are seeing those numbers rise as we're nearing the summer lease end season. The top complaint categories for 2024 were leases at 31%, maintenance at 27%, and evictions and early termination at approximately 11% each. This year, leases were down to 26%, maintenance 26% as well, and we had a spike in lockouts. So we had 28 complaints, up from 0 from last year, and utilities, we had 23 complaints, up from 6 from last year, and evictions was down to 5% this year. These notable increases in 2025, as far as lockouts and utility-related complaints, were linked to MTO's focused in-person outreach at certain buildings. So they had more exposure in those buildings and more people came up to them to provide them those information and feedback. So a little bit on the caller profile. We are receiving more tenant-initiated calls at 95% in 2025, which is similar to 2024. And the landlord-initiated calls are both approximately 5% in each of those years. There were no mediation cases last year and none so far this year. But we have provided 4 virtual landlord and tenant trainings, 2 for landlords, 2 for tenants, both in Spanish and English. And we're very happy to report that our first landlord session had 72 attendees. So that was like mind-blowing to us. That was an extremely well-attended webinar. And right now we are in the process of working with the communications team to produce FAQ video snippets so we can put out more information on the RLTO to people on social media and the newsletters. So we're excited about that. As far as other engagement, the text for help usage has been a bit low in 2025. We've only received 10 texts this year. And so far, we've received 41 logged and resolved Evanston 311 requests. And it usually takes an average of 1.8 days for MTO to resolve those. So that is the report portion. So if you all have any questions.
Yeah, I do.
Yep. Ms. Maloney.
Okay, on notices, what does that mean? Notices.
So whether or not they're getting eviction notices or if they have notices questions.
Okay, and on leases, what type of problems or issues were people calling about?
So it varies, but we do have Phil Devon on the call, so he could probably speak a little bit more on what specific types of lease questions he's getting.
No. And then on utilities, does that mean they don't have any utilities or what? I'm sorry, well.
Yeah, there's different types of utilities questions like pricing and things like that.
Sounds like
Phil,
what
do you
And
have
you
any
said who's
comments?
on the line again?
Phil Devon, he's with the Metropolitan Tenants Organization.
Yeah, that was going to be my first question. Is there? I know they usually are here to give the report. So yeah, if you could introduce yourself, Phil.
Yes, hi everyone on the committee. I apologize. I'm traveling now, so that's why I'm joining remotely. I'm a staff attorney at MTO. I'm one of the program staff that also helps oftentimes answer some questions. May they come through the Q Alert 311 system or hotline or other means of referrals. So I'm pretty in tune with a lot of the Evanston calls we get. These questions. When the leases, as Anna did know, it could be all different types of questions, but if I had to generalize it, I would say oftentimes it's questions like, is this legal? Can this be included in my lease? Or it may be a question about rules. Oftentimes it's a question a tenant has when they're looking or about to sign a lease. Or sometimes when there's some dispute and they may want to move or something like that, then we'll be looking at leases and answering specific questions. That's usually what lease questions are about, is the actual content. And then utilities questions also can run the gambit, but usually if someone's calling about utilities or essential services, it's because there's some sort of problem. Whether, it's not always, we don't have heat or we don't have electric, but usually it's more like things aren't working properly. It's not warm enough all winter, or every time we plug something in, the power goes out. Those kind of questions we get frequently under the utility category.
And Phil, are y'all in the middle of executive director search?
That is correct. We are. The search is ongoing. As far as updates, I know our board of directors search committee has been conducting interviews, but I know that's ongoing. So we certainly don't yet have a candidate or rather a replacement for our current director, but that is ongoing. I think the goal was, at least when it was announced, that he would be retiring over the summer, but he also has agreed to stay on as long as it takes, quite frankly, to find the right person to replace them, and also see out kind of some of the projects that he was helping personally with.
So John is still active in his position until his replacement is hired?
Yes, correct. Absolutely.
Okay. That was a little side note. Any other questions?
I think, thanks for being on the call, Phil. One of the things I was wondering, it would be great to see the data per ward, broken out calls per ward, and also if we're seeing like an uptick based on certain building owners, if there's a breakdown, like how many calls are coming from are one-offs, or is there, because I know, Anna, you mentioned some of it was because of outreach to certain buildings. So it'd be interesting to see what percentage increase is due to certain, I don't know if we can share that, but I know there's some sensitivity around it, but it'd be good to get a little bit further breakdown of how the volume of calls breaks out.
Yes, we can talk to probably the Evanston 311 Q Alert and see if that could be a possibility. But I could reach out to them and let you know if that's a possibility.
That'd be great.
Yep. Okay, and
we could, and I could, sorry, Anna, just to add as a direct response to that question, we have started trying to collect more demographic data. This is just in addition to obviously landlords, which we would get when we have a call. And I can discuss that with Anna and let Anna know what additional data we have. And maybe if you guys want to see that stuff, could be incorporated into these monthly call reports. A couple things come to mind, just like, gender, race, and some things that I think the committee would probably want to see that we could start including.
That'd be great. I appreciate it.
And do you track ward? Do y'all track ward, Phil? What ward somebody lives in? Probably not, right?
I'll have to get back to you because I don't want to say no, because I do know for our Chicago calls that ward is tracked. In fact, when we put an address in, it automatically populates that.
Okay.
And so I'll find out. And if not, I could ask if it's something that we could change so that anytime we put an Evanston call in, that ward is just automatically populated, because I think that would certainly be helpful. So I will certainly follow up with that.
Yeah, and I'm sure our GIS team could help with that if needed. Any other questions? Yeah.
Comment?
Yeah, or comment.
Okay, yeah, this is, I was really excited to see that there was such high attendance among landlords. I guess I don't know the denominator, but that 72 sounds really great. And I was just curious how you got that level of participation. And then I guess with the tenants, this is maybe more of a comment. It seems like my understanding is that tenants don't think you don't train ahead of time for something you don't think you're going to need. And so maybe for them, the ability to access videos as they need them with these FAQs is just how they're going to interface with this kind of program.
Yes. So to answer your question, we do have a database of landlords, registered landlords, that we reached out to them. They also sign up for our landlord newsletter, and we have approximately 3,000 landlords on that newsletter. So we send out an email blast. We made sure to advertise through communications, through social media, email, and then just flyers at our different locations. So, yeah.
Thanks.
And
that
that
still
was
seems
also,
like a good initial participation.
Yes, and it was also related to the RLTO outreach, so I'm pretty sure they were interested to learn more about the updates. The next...
I just had two or three. So Phil, have y'all ever thought about tracking, like coming up with some simple codes to start to track outcomes, like what happens after someone calls? Or after you connect with someone?
We have, I think the big hurdle right now is capacity, is that we've just got too many initial calls to get through, so we haven't had necessarily the capacity to do follow-ups. And I think the other maybe issue, at least that I can identify right away, is that probably the bigger problem is that oftentimes these issues aren't resolved. The nature of the advice and the guidance that we're often giving is somewhat long-term, or at least, not short-term as in a couple days turnaround.
Right.
We may tell them, hey, you give this notice, that's going to be a couple weeks until this happens and that happens. So there is a time frame, but I think, and I know, in fact, we were just speaking offline, Anna and company, about doing another survey and trying to get some feedback. And I think, so it's not something that we've had in the past set up, but I know that's something on our radar to try and start getting some more data around that.
Okay. And then in terms of the video snippets, I really like that idea, and would love also if we can program it. So I don't know if when we have people who, when people sign up for, to become a landlord or housing provider, I should say, and they register on the rental registration list, is there like an automatic email that gets sent out? And if so, it'd be nice to include this type of information when that goes out, if anything goes out right now?
We do have an automated message that comes up when people click on the Landlord Tenant Resources webpage,
Okay.
part of our website. But I can see and talk to our registration coordinator to see if that's a possibility.
Perfect. Okay.
No.
Yeah, please.
Do you track by building or landlord?
No, not per se. We do collect addresses of every tenant we talk to, and we ask, we don't always, we can't collect information and folks won't give us, sometimes they won't tell us who the landlord is. But, so we get that information, but I guess we don't track that per se.
And then before we move on, Councilmember Hedekatis, I know you asked for calls per ward. Was there something else that you requested?
It was the possibility of maybe aggregating by landlord, just
Okay.
if there's, and also I'm just curious to see if if you have 100 calls, are 30 of them coming from, or half of them coming from 3 landlords? Or
Yeah.
So I think trying to figure out if there's a pattern to things.
Or building owners
Or
even.
building owner, yeah.
Yeah, if you could follow up with us then about the outcomes that I talked about, aggregating by landlord. I think we're already on schedule to get a survey. I think that's something we had already worked out last term. So hopefully that's already programmed into our meetings.
Yeah, so that's coming up in November. So
Okay,
we usually do more of like a qualitative highlights document
Yeah.
when they're in their renewal period, and it's coming up in November. So we're looking into that right now.
Yes, I would just say the aggregating by landlord, the outcomes, if we can just, at the next meeting, maybe have a follow-up on those 2 requests, and calls per ward as well. And that's, okay, we can move on to the next section of this
So
then.
I'm gonna. So the next portion is discussion on the MTO Landlord Tenant Walking Hours Program Pilot. The MTO Pilot Walking Hours Program Pilot was in collaboration with the Evanston Public Library, MTO, and the city. And it was started in the 21st, March 21st, to offer in-person services in tandem with the RLTO updates. It was given every first and third Monday of the month at the Evanston Public Library. And there were 22 unique attendees, of which 7 were from the city of Evanston. So right now we are seeking guidance on next steps, considering the attendance trends and the outcomes. So any guidance that the committee has on where to take the pilot program next. One option was to stop the program, and another option was to extend the program for another 3 months.
Councilmember Isles.
If we extend the program, could you consider a change in the hours? Like 1:30 to 4:30 people are working, so that could depress the amount of people that took advantage of this particular program.
Yes, that could be a consideration to make.
Remember Hedekatis, I think you were next, or no? Or somebody else next? I thought there was some light on. Was it, you Fran? Did you have the light on? Yeah.
I would just like to make the comment that I think it could be a very, very valuable resource here, and I would really like to see it continue. I'm not sure how to generate more interest. I think there are people who have issues. There may be people who are afraid to speak up. I don't want to bring up something that is like sort of at rest right now, but even though we have new regulations, this just cause provision is still out there as the ultimate way to protect tenants to speak out and organize. Right now, there still can be retaliation very covertly and indirectly, even though there are protections through the law. So perhaps the only device we have right now is this vehicle. And I also agree that perhaps expanding hours or changing hours or alternating hours to catch more people would be a good way to get the word out and expand the knowledge base of our residents.
And, yeah, members along me.
Yeah, I'm concerned that there were more people not from Evanston than from Evanston. Can you say where they were from? Were they Chicago or other suburbs?
We really don't have that information. I don't know if Phil has any more insight on that. But there were substantially more attendees from other places. I don't really know where they found out about it, but they were there.
Yeah, we had several people from Chicago, and then the most people were from Skokie, and then a couple other. I think we had one person from Northbrook and a few other.
And Phil, you're kind of breaking up, but MTO serves those areas, right? So is it possible that they found out about it through email communication from MTO?
Well, I don't think they would have found out through us. It is possible. Okay. It is possible because we communicated, but we only targeted Evanston folks. Of course, there's probably some overlap, and I'm sure if one person tells someone, next thing you know. But we did only specifically target Evanston tenants with our flyers.
Okay. Yeah, just quickly for folks to know where this came from. This was, this is something that I encouraged us to at least try out. There was a gentleman from the Fifth Ward who ended up taking the train downtown Chicago, which I believe is where MTO is headquartered. If I'm wrong, correct me, Phil. And just felt like whether it was a day, 2 days, just having some local presence is important. Especially because I believe the last contract the city had way back when, they were headquartered in Evanston. They were accessible in different ways than MTO, which is fine, but just felt like they should have some local presence. And so that's where this came from. As I said in the email, I emailed everybody prior to the meeting saying that I would love for us to at the very least, continue it for an additional 3 months. I've had some conversations, and honestly, I'd like to kind of pass it on to city staff to follow up on these things. But I've had some conversations with Betty Ball, Executive Director of Connection for the Homeless, as well as some staff from Open Communities. And similar to what I was saying before about like these automatic messages going out when something happens, I think we need to figure out how to do more of that. And so what I had suggested to them is, in all of your emails, for all your outreach specialists at Open Communities and Connections that are working with participants, just as an automatic thing, this suggestion I gave them was in the signature line of their email, to just put it on there. So every time they're communicating with somebody, again, they're both Open Communities, a fair housing organization. Connections is homeless prevention organization. So anytime they're communicating, just as one way to kind of automatically program it, it could be in the signature line so that every time the people are emailing, they see, okay, there's open hours on this day. That's just one idea. I'm sure if we put our heads together, we could think of 10 different ways to really get the word out. I'd like to do that before we call it quits. The one question I had, though, is it seems like it would cost us, since the pilot period is over, I'm looking at an additional $2,800 a year in addition to what we already pay them. Is that the way to understand this?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And so will we have to amend that contract, or how would that even work? That feels like,
I
don't know if we even have the ability to do that.
We would have to amend for that amount. Marion?
Yeah, I can take that question, Anna.
Yeah, thank you.
So, good evening, everybody. I'm sorry I'm not able to be present. I've been sick. We wouldn't have to, I don't believe we would have to update the contract because there was some up to amount that was included in the agreement. It is an additional cost, but we don't always reach our up to amount, so our maximum amount for the agreement. We may come back to HCDC later in the year if this project, as well as others such as mediation or their work on their chatbot project, kind of gets us to reach the threshold. But as of this moment, we would be able to move forward without updating the agreement. The other thing I wanted to mention, based on the participation and based on the fact that this is a program that is funded through Evanston taxpayer money and the affordable housing funds, if you're looking to expand this program, I would suggest maybe reducing it to only Evanston residents. So you're not spending money outside of that. And then we can consider what hours MTO is able to provide that could maybe overlap late afternoon and early evening for additional people to participate. We have seen historically that in-person participation is very low. That's one of the reasons that was stopped in the after the original trial when that was done, said pre-COVID. But I think if you're looking to expand and see how this program continues over a longer period of time, that's a worthwhile effort to really confirm whether or not there's interest.
And do you need anything from us to, because it sounds like if we can continue this without any additional costs, at least for now. So do you need us to vote on anything to do that?
No, we don't need a vote. We just felt it was fair to come back to the committee and seek your direction, given this was something the committee had asked for. Technically speaking, this is something we can do administratively, but we wanted to ensure we had your direction around whether the committee wanted to stop. It is an added expense compared to previous years, but we can spend it based on the current agreement.
So I probably would have assumed it was Evanston residents only, I guess, unless... Phil, do you have any concerns about us making it Evanston only? But I probably assume that that's how it was set up.
I think the real consideration is just time. And I mean, the reality is that MTO staff, if they can, they're not going to turn anyone away.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm not sure how to answer. I don't think we'd have the issue of you'd had to turn someone away because we only were serving Evanston renters. But I don't think MTO would have a problem if the committee said this is for Evanston renters only, with maybe a tacit understanding that as long as all those Evanston renters are served, that, we would also serve the Skokie, not turn them away and then twiddle our thumbs at the library kind of thing.
And maybe as simple as being just prioritized as opposed to, restricting it to Evanston residents. How does the committee feel about this?
So I would, so my thoughts is if we're not incurring it, obviously there's a cost to this, but if we can do this administratively, I think it's worth one more shot. Considering, this was, suspended because of COVID. I'm okay. I agree with Phil. Like, I think they probably shouldn't turn people away, but if we can just have, say Evanston residents have priority, I think it's worth giving it another shot since we've already committed to spending a certain amount of money. But I think if we get for me personally, if we get the similar numbers back next time on the report, I'd say we gave it a good shot. And maybe, I don't know how for the other council members up here, like I usually get emails that I forward to MTO or tell them like, here's the best course of action. I don't think I've ever, directed someone to walk-in hours. It's usually like folks just don't know where to go when they either call 311 or they call their local representative. So I think there is worth in reaching everyone at, as many methods as we can. But since there's a cost, I would just say, let's give it one more shot and see how it goes.
Okay. Yep. We'll go here and then here, I think, unless you had it first. I wasn't looking.
I don't know.
Did you get it on first? Okay.
Okay, one just small comment. If there are similar issues with similar building owners in more than one area of the town, it may be really informative to include people from other communities in the proximity surrounding us.
Okay. Yeah.
Chair?
Yes.
I just want to mention that I believe Councilmember Rogers has been wanting to participate online.
Okay, we'll go to you next, but you can go first. Yes.
Thank you. So I think it's incredibly helpful for there to be in person when people need them, just because they might be going through a situation that's really emotional for them. Something else that I wanted to put out before the committee to consider and staff to consider is echoing what Chloe said. I had similar thoughts around it, where some people may not know what they need until they're facing the situation. And then again, may not know where to go, similar to what Councilmember Haracaros shared. And so has there ever been any thoughts around an LMS, so a learning management software, where, because the information on the website I looked at is like, it's dense. It's a lot of policy and a lot of good information within it, but creating some type of format that's easily accessible, that it could be location agnostic, if that's the case, if it's an online platform, evergreen, and someone can access it in real time when they need it, just looking up various topics that might pertain to their situation.
Marion or Phil, do you have any input on
Yes. Yes, we are working on this. MTO is working with a partner. I believe they've moved to a different partner, UIC, around a conversational kind of chatbot web platform system where people can ask their question and can be taken through like branched version of content to be able to get quick answers to their issues while they wait for potential callback for MTO or just to completely resolve the issue. But bottom line is yes, absolutely.
Also
we
a great
agree and
option.
we're working on it.
That's great.
Matherson.
I think Matt Rogers wanted to talk
Yeah, I'm
first.
sorry. Matt, Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you. Yeah, just kind of reiterating a couple things. I think I'm fine with moving forward for another 3 months, seeing if we can get more participation. One thing that I would encourage, I guess, as part of that maybe, is I've noticed that we're flyering a lot of places, but we're meeting in one centralized location at one time. Has there been any thought given to moving it about a bit to kind of hit people where they're a little more located? Not everybody can get to the library real easily, and if it's in a limited time frame. And would there be any desire to not have a 24/7 or anything ridiculous like that? That's not what I'm proposing, but some sort of like a call-in time also for people who might be able to just call in, ask a simple question, and figure out where they need to go next. So that we're able to give people, having first and third Monday in roughly a 3-hour time slot probably isn't easy for a lot of people to try to get answers, participate, that sort of thing. So I don't know if there's any way to do that without incurring a lot of additional costs or anything, but that would be something that I would say we probably should look at to get a truly good test on whether people are able to access this, because I just wonder if our numbers are low because people are working, people can't get there, and on and on and on.
Yeah, so we can definitely analyze a change in time and maybe different locations with MTO and see what we can come up with.
And I would, I would just add, we do, I think in this instance, to your question, I would say we might want to try to up our marketing or communications around our simple text, because I think that does solve a lot of what council member just mentioned, which is folks, that can't maybe talk during work hours. Some folks want to talk on the telephone, some just want to text. If folks use that text for help number, they're given the option of a phone call, an email, a text, and that is guaranteed within 48 hours, but MTO I know is answering those much faster than that.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I mean, if we're trying to develop a pilot program, that's something that MTO is already doing. That's outside of this, if I'm correct. So I'm looking for a way, if we're going to be putting in MTO office hours, for lack of a better time, walk-in times, that we're generating something that is different and unique beyond what everybody can already do. Because if we aren't, then having this isn't really beneficial. I mean, we get 7 people from Evanston. It's not really doing what we want it to do, I guess, by adding that next layer of in-person discussion, conversation where people can just drop in and sort of get answers.
So if I may speak to that, the pilot that we're discussing right now is an additional layer to an existing agreement that the city of Evanston has specifically with MTO to provide services to Evanston residents. So the core of that agreement was the hotline, which is, I believe, what you described, a way for them to call in or text to be able to get answers. And then request was made to add a layer of in-person for people that wanted to have face-to-face conversation and not have to go through technology. So I believe you do have what you're describing.
Okay, then my question is, what are we looking for? Are we just simply looking to try to get a larger number of people to participate? We have 7 and then 19 from outside of Evanston. Are we simply trying to get that number up to 50 people? Or what is the metric that we're measuring against?
So
I understand this is an add-on to an existing program, but what does this add-on, what is our goal for this add-on, and how do we determine that it's a successful program?
I think that's something the committee could discuss. The request was made by the committee to add an in-person component to this. So that's something that the committee could decide.
Phil, do you have any thoughts on that question? Councilmember Rogers, I'm glad you brought that up because that was a question that I also had that I forgot. So thank you. But I do think that is an important question. Phil, do you have any sense of what that number should be, or how MTO is looking at it?
I mean, realistically, I think MTO looks at it right now is that there may be a better use of our time, just because given what Marion has already mentioned, that there's the hotline, they've got the simple text helpline, they've got 311 Q alert. There's a lot of options and we can kind of churn through those. So I do think that, at least as it is, without some sort of assurance that we'd have more Evanston renters, that I think we could use our time or limited resources maybe somewhere else. But I don't know. I certainly think that there are tenants that can and will need in-person assistance. But if we're having trouble getting them or finding them, there is, with such limited resources, it's hard to say. So I don't know. It's hard. I know you asked for more of a number, but I would.
I don't need a specific number. That was just an example. But I mean, I want to know how we're determining that this is a successful pilot. And so that when we come back in 3 months to discuss this, and like I said, I'm in favor of extending it for 3 months, but when we come back in 3 months, what are we looking for to determine whether this is something we want to either make permanent, or that we tried and it just really didn't work, and maybe go back to the drawing board, maybe we try something different. So that's what I'm looking for, is when we're back here in 3 months, what is that? What is it we're looking for? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a number. That was just an example.
Yeah. Who had their light on? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair question. Like I know when I looked at the intake numbers seeing 1 and 2 and some days where no one showed up, that looked like, yeah, that's probably isn't the best use of MTO's time. Personally, I would, and maybe Phil can speak to this, it's probably hard to also quantify each case because I'm sure some people come in and it's like a 15-minute conversation, and other people you come in, you could probably spend an hour going over things. I think if we're trying to get the word out more, and for me, if we don't see those numbers double or triple, that kind of says to me that maybe the best course of action is just to have a more targeted appointment system. But yeah, it's hard to know because it's like you can't. I'm sure these are all unique situations. I mean, there's probably categories, but yeah.
Who else had their light on? I'm sorry. I'm trying to get used to these lights.
On. Yeah. So, I mean, this is just since you asked where we stand on all of this, and I think that the main reason that I would support continuing to do, or one of the main reasons, is just that it's not. This has been going on for a really short amount of time, and so it's hard to say, whether people just don't know enough about it, and whether if just even looking at the landlord tenant services report, there's a steady demand in general for some kind of assistance, and this is not all related to the walk-in, but I'm wondering if we just continue it for a few months, change sort of how it's discussed or advertised, and maybe consider. I like Councilmember Rogers' suggestion of maybe thinking about where we might locate this. This maybe goes to some of the questions in our earlier discussion too about, if we knew some of the wards where some complaints were coming from, or some requests, for assistance, then that might also be informative in terms of how we might locate this somewhere where it's most needed. But the main reason that I see for continuing it right now is just if we have the resources to do that, it might be worth seeing if letting this run for a few more months might generate, a sizable enough increase in interest to let us decide whether or not it's worth it in the longer run.
My 2 observations. One was that it could be seasonal. So there could be an influx, as was mentioned before by Anna, during the summer, maybe winter and what have you, like it was, as I saw in the data for 2023. We know that economic conditions are changing, so there may be more of an influx coming within the year. And then the other observation was around, it sounds like this could also be a process issue. Like I know it can be a little disheartening to have staff there and not see anyone come when you want to be there and you want to help, and that is the goal. And also on the other end, when residents might want the assistance and not have someone to turn to. So maybe looking at the process itself and turning it into an appointment-based option, so that getting it out there and saying, okay, we know how many people are going to come on this day, so we know how to staff up, we know how much time we need to dedicate to it, we know which and rotating as well. But yeah, looking at the process itself.
This last time around, we did have registration where residents could email or call to be put on kind of like a schedule, so they wouldn't be waiting for too long if there was a line or many people at the walking hours.
How long was that that wait time? In between registering in order to get an appointment and then actually having the appointment? And were there factors that influenced that, like the situation was resolved or they found resources otherwhere? Is there a way to tighten that turnaround time?
Phil, do you have insights on that?
I believe Phil had to drop due to battery issue. But if I remember well, we didn't have many signups. People ended up showing up without signing up. So MTO probably has very low data on this. I think in the memo we had talked about, so it sounds like the committee is looking to go and extend this for 3 months, which I think will give us an opportunity to kind of see. Sometimes it takes a little while for word of mouth and for people to become aware of an opportunity like this. So it'll give us more time to an opportunity to kind of maybe make some adjustment. And then there's, after that, depending on how this goes, there's always opportunity to look at maybe other options. I think the main issue that we were trying to resolve based on what HCDC had provided to us was people being uncomfortable with calling or texting or doing that on their own and wanting to have some assistance kind of in person. There's things we could explore, such as what was mentioned there, just a scheduled phone call or Zoom call, or maybe kind of some level of support for a Zoom call to happen like at the library. So it's almost like in person as a scheduled appointment during certain hours, but it's not as heavy as a commitment for MTO. So there's an alternative that could be looked at if we find that in person is maybe not the best option in the future.
I guess if I could just jump in since.
Yeah, one more time, because I want us to really dig into Envision Evanston. So if we can make this the last comment, then I'll have a brief comment. Yep.
I just have one question, and it's I don't know if staff can give us any insight, and I don't need an answer tonight. I mean, we seem to have started off strong and kind of winnowed down. So I don't know if it was the initial push that got people out, and then people sort of forgot about it or became background noise or whatever. But if there's anything staff can provide when we talk about this next time about, why we did, 12 people the first week, and then it sort of winnowed down to, 3 to 4 people and then 0 this past time.
Yeah, and then my only comments on this, just to kind of recap. So we think this is something that can be done administratively, so we don't need to take any action right now. We talked about, new hours. And also, before I get into this, can we bring this back next month, every month for the next 3 months, basically? Just so we can get an update, and if we need to make minor tweaks between meetings, we'll have an opportunity to do that. So that's the first thing. So we talked about new hours, so if we can explore that. A new outreach strategy. I actually like the idea of call-in hours. Maybe it can run concurrently with the office hours. While they're there, they can, some of their time could be used for call-in, some of it could be for in-person. I mean, they can work out what that looks like. But I think the idea is just people want to be able to, they want to be able to talk to somebody when they're when they're most in need. And typically I've had, an opportunity to engage a lot in landlord and tenant disputes. Like when they call, it's a serious issue at that point, right? And the longer it takes to talk to somebody, sometimes the worse things get, even if it's just the kind of, how somebody feels emotionally. And so for that reason, I think I actually like the idea of call-in hours. It doesn't have to be a different time. Maybe, again, we run it at the same time of the office hours. I think that's something that staff can explore with MTO and determine if it makes sense. It was brought up for y'all to also consider if a new location would make sense, or having it at the library, maybe somewhere else. Maybe some of the call-in data can help us make that determination. And one other thing. Location, outreach. I think that's all for now.
Okay.
Cool.
We'll be back with staff updates.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. What do we have next?
Next, we have the CPAH IHO waitlist report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I remember what it was now. If this doesn't work, I do think a Calendly type thing could work, or there's a lot of organizations now that I've noticed, even companies that have like just a call-in service. I don't know what it costs. Everybody seems to have it now, so I'm sure it doesn't cost that much. But even that would be fine. The point is that when somebody calls, somebody picks up, right, and says, look, we can get you scheduled or we can get you a call back, but something happened. You're able to talk to somebody, or you're able to with Calendly, if MTO works it out to where they're just putting all their availability on a calendar, and somebody can just go in and book some time, that would be great. So I think if this doesn't work, we do have some other options to explore. Okay. Now we're on 7D, and this is for action. So somebody can make a motion to accept and place on file the CPAH Inclusionary Housing Ordinance Waitlist Report.
I move to accept and place on file the CPAH Inclusionary Housing Ordinance Waitlist Report.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been properly seconded.
Okay, so this is a brief summary of the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance waitlist data as managed by the Community Partners for Affordable Housing.
And just a quick question, sorry. Unless I'm not recalling correct, usually the organizations provide the report. Are they not available, or are we changing things a little bit?
So when we come in either June or July with just the staff updates for the reports, they don't come.
So this is just
But
a staff update?
This
then
is
there's
just
a
staff
okay,
update.
okay,
The
perfect.
reason that Phil was here was because we had that discussion item for the pilot program.
No, you just jogged my memory. Thank you. Okay, continue, please. Thank you.
So this is waitlist data managed by CPAH, which reflects housing demand and income trends in Evanston. So this has been updated up through May, and we've right now, as it stands, it includes 904 households. 64% of them earning 50% below the area median income. So it was fully updated before this meeting, and a little bit on the household size and income breakdown. The majority of the applicants are 1 and 2 person households, and this makes up over 70% of the list. It's important to note, though, that this does not represent the actual need for larger units. For larger households, there's just not as many larger units available for them to apply into. So most of the applicants fall within the 1 to 30% AMI and the 31 to 50% AMI income sets. Local preference, the last time we brought this report was in June of last year. And while the households on the waitlist have gone down since then, we used to have, I believe, 1,100 around that time, July of 2024. It has gone down by 107 households. So while that has gone down, the local preference has remained the same, which makes up around 38% of those households preferring to be housed within Evanston. A little bit of the demographics. This is voluntary survey data that households provide. It's 57.6% Black African American, 18% white, 15% Asian, 3% Hispanic, and others mixed is 6%. As far as occupancy status, 98% occupancy rate among existing inclusionary housing units. And there's also an 88% lease renewal rate over the past year. And we anticipate 84 total units are either occupied or anticipated to be occupied by the end of 2025. There are a few upcoming units. There's 3 new affordable units that are expected to be available later this year, and 37 from approved developments that are coming into the pipeline from 2026 to 2028. Outreach and waitlist management. So CPAH has conducted a comprehensive outreach update by email, mail, and text to households. and households that did not respond to that outreach have been removed from the wait list. Available units are marketed online through local partners, for example, the libraries and schools. So this is overall reflects like a strong demand for affordable housing, particularly among low-income and small households. So this is the report, and CPAH continues to make efforts to maintain the current and accessible waitlist.
All right. Questions, comments?
Just one comment. One thing, thank you for giving us an update. Every time we get this report, it's really sobering, and I think there's a lot of work to be done. I just want to say, a lot of times, like we just updated the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance. There are things coming down the pipeline that will make a big impact on this list, which is very exciting. The other thing, kind of anecdotally, I've received feedback in talking to one developer. He said that Evanston does a great job of managing the list. It was really good to hear that, CPAH is really proactive, and it seems as though we have much less bureaucratic red tape to go through to get apartments filled, and that's not the case in all municipalities. So that was really good to hear directly from someone who deals with us. So just wanted to share that with the public. So that was, I think we have positive momentum, but like I said, we need to do a lot more work.
Any other comments? Yeah, members of the
Yeah, and just looking at those on the wait list, it looks like the highest demand is people 31 to 50% of AMI. When you look at the occupied, most people are in the 51 to 60. Am I reading it right? 51 to 60%.
Yes, you're reading it right.
There's a little mismatch there. But then my other question is, how long do people stay in these units? I'm sure once they get in, they don't ever want to leave unless they no longer fit the requirement, the financial requirement.
Right. There is a high occupancy rate, so it's at 98. So whenever a household does get into a unit, they tend to stay and be housed for as long as they possibly can. Marian, do you want to add anything to the report?
Yeah, I think in the report, CPAH updated their turnover rate. Turnover is very, very low on those units. I think the latest number they gave us was 88% turnover. You're absolutely reading this chart right. So we have this wait list. If you look at the number around households, and if you look particularly around the 51% to 80%, that's the core of where current potential applicants are coming from right now, because the vast majority of the units are 60% AMI. Now with the update, and you're right, like the 31 to 50% area has the bulk of the number of households that are on the wait list. With the changes that were made to the ADJO, we took that into account by updating it so that there's opportunity for weighted average and maybe more opportunity for 50% AMI units that could kind of dip into this pool. But yes, when you read it, like you're reading it very correctly. That is one key challenge.
Anything else? Councilmember Rogers, because I can't see any hands up there, but do you have your hand up?
I do have one quick question.
I do not.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Member Sweeney.
I didn't mean to interrupt him.
No.
So how is rent maintained at a certain level? Like what prevents the rents to be increased to drive people out of these placements? Is there a policy?
So, yes, absolutely. The rents are set based on IDA's rent chart by AMI and by household size, or sorry, by AMI household size for the income, but the rents are by unit size and AMI level. So every year they come with a new chart, and the rents cannot be increased beyond that level. So at least CPAH is recertifying the household to make sure they're still eligible, but they're also reviewing the rents with the property manager to make sure that the increase is in line with keeping that affordability.
Thank you.
And is it also the case that someone will remain eligible until they're at least 80%? Until they earn at least 80%? Is it 100%? Okay. So I just wanted y'all to know that. That's also a reason why I think people probably stay in the units longer. And I think this is a good thing, because there's this thing where, you can make $1 over, and then all of a sudden, you're no longer eligible, and you have to scramble to find a new unit, which I don't think is a good policy. But I think it is important for us to know that once you're in, then your AMI, your income can go up to 100% of the AMI before you're no longer eligible for the program.
And actually, they still have a year, so they get renewed once they reach 100% of certification, and they get notified that if their income stays there, then they'll have to move out. And the reason for that is because asking somebody to leave a unit that's at 80% AMI, that doesn't mean they'll be able to afford a market rate unit, because they're at 80% AMI, not 100%. So that was the logic there.
Member Thurston.
Yep, two just quick questions. One, I just can't remember this, but do the IHO buildings, do they lifespan out? Like, is there a sort of a set number of years that they have to maintain those, and then, or
Yes.
is it in perpetuity?
30.
30, okay. And then, okay, so I don't know when these ones are aging out. For the 2026 to 2028 ones, is there any sense of the unit sizes or AMIs that those might entail?
Yeah, there's actually some really good news on that front. For one of the first time, we're seeing much larger units. City Council approved a project recently that had 4 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms.
Wow.
We're also seeing a little bit of uptick. I will say a little bit, because we're starting from very low on 2 bedrooms. The 37, there are projects that are approved. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be constructed. Sometimes something happens, but they've been approved. They can move forward. There is very large projects that are in the works that are not yet approved that include a lot more units than we've ever seen as far as the IHO. So you should expect those numbers to change vastly. And we're actually preparing for that influx of units with CPAH to make sure that we keep building the wait list to be ready.
That's great, thanks.
Anybody else? Just to understand, so for the wait list, how should I understand it? So people on the wait list who are between 0 and 30% AMI, there's 30 that live in Evanston and 147 total. Is that the way to understand this? On the wait list? I think I'm looking at the wait list.
Oh, I believe so. Let me pull the report.
All right.
I don't see it on the screen. Yes, that is essentially, so 30 are the local preference, which is kind of the key demographics that we're interested in here. So right now.
Is that just me, Evanston resident, or how do we define that local preference, just so we're on the same page about what that means?
Evanston residents and people that are Evanston workers as well.
Okay. And so same thing, 31 to 50% AMI, there's 173 that are Evanston residents or work here, 433 total.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's good because it's allowing us to capture data that hopefully will include in the comprehensive plan discussion, which we'll talk about in a minute. But to the earlier point, I think it's the new amended IHO ordinance, I think might get us 40% at some point. Probably not much under that, but again, I think it's good that we're collecting this data to inform kind of future policy decisions. So this is good. The only other thing, and I included this in the email, at our next meeting, I wanted again, not to get as far as to requiring this, but for SEPA to put some thought into how they might make this, the wait list more transparent. I'll quickly read the email I sent out to all the committee members, just for the record. It basically said, I would also like SEPA to attend our next meeting with a plan to make the IHO wait list more transparent by publishing the list online with unique numbers for applicants. So again, we wouldn't disclose the names of people on the list, but they would know. So that way only the individual would know whether they're on the wait list and where they stand on it. We did something similar with the reparations program. And while the IHO process is more complex, I believe we can develop a workable solution. We're also considering this, the 5/5 TIF committee, which I chair. We're also considering this for a home rehab program that we're developing. This is important because there's always public concern about fairness and potential favoritism with opaque processes like this one. A more transparent system would help residents manage expectations, make informed decisions, and possibly even step aside if they feel unlikely to be served soon, creating new opportunities for others. More broadly, we're in a housing crisis in Evanston. These units are extremely valuable and highly sought after. That alone warrants a higher standard of transparency and accountability in how we manage access to them. So, again, not requiring anything, but if there's no objection to that, I want SEPA to respond to that to see if there's any workable solution whereby, again, somebody could literally log on, see exactly where they are on the list, see how the list is changing over time. And I think it would be helpful to have that just to increase public trust around the process. And as I said, to help people better kind of plan for what they're going to do. Any comments on that? Any concerns, or are we okay letting?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I know in previous discussions, one of the toughest things about the wait list is, something can come available, and if your current living situation doesn't allow you to move in the next month or two, it's hard to align the timing of this a lot. So, when people look at it, it's like you said, like most people end up staying because this is like such a needed resource. And then, there's, up until now, there's been just a trickle of new units available. So hopefully, I think having the transparency around when things come available, and also letting people know that, like, hey, in the future, there is, potentially 30 new units coming available. So, people can also be a little bit more prepared, and I think that would help move people off the list more efficiently as well.
May I add some context around this?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to work with SEPA and see what they're able to and what they'd like to respond to this. I reached out to Sheik already this afternoon to better understand what they did for reparations. I think I can talk to SEPA and see if they're able to come back, if it's enough time to come back at the next meeting, and if so, we'll add it as an agenda item. There's a couple things that come to mind as far as some challenges around a single wait list. There's a lot of nuance. So a couple example, the wait list is made up of multiple components, which you can see even in the report. There's different household size, different income level, local preference, and then the kind of minimum income within the bracket that we're showing here that's needed to be able to afford the rent that the property manager sets within the maximum range they're allowed to set. Sometimes they go lower based on the unit and location, things like that. So couple example, but somebody could be on the wait list. It could be number 12, but be a household of 4 at 40% AMI and sit there for quite a while. Somebody could be number 400, but be a household of 1 at an income level of like 70% with a local preference and be contacted really quickly because there's maybe less people on the wait list for a studio that are already available to move in at an 80% level. So we can discuss with CPAH and see what's possible. We can try to explore more transparency about the process. I do have some concern about people seeing that their numbers being really low, when in reality they might be contacted first because their specificity with match to a unit that's available might make it that they get contacted quicker than a larger household at a lower income.
Yeah, and I'm not proposing a single list. It would, even for our reparations program, which is not, it's just one of the examples. I think the one we're creating around home rehab is probably a better example. But even on that, we had like one list for descendants, one for ancestors as defined by the program. So although there'll be kind of one place where you can get this information, I don't imagine we'll be able to create one list. And as I mentioned, it very much so more complex than those other examples, which is why, again, I don't want to dictate to them, that, okay, we're requiring you to do this. More so just have a conversation to see if it's even something that's feasible and how they might go about it. And even if we just better understand their protocol to making these decisions, I think that's helpful because I don't think the community necessarily understands that as well, just how they can, how they might be moved up or down in priority based on all those different factors. So even if just greater understanding of how this works and how and how different applicants are kind of evaluated, to me would be also of benefit. We can move on. I don't think there's any other questions unless there is online, but yeah, if we could have, and if not next meeting, the following meeting would be fine. So again, whatever works for CPAH, but would love for them to come back and discuss this with us when they're available and after they've put some serious thought into it. Okay, I think that was that for action? That was for action. So we'll take a vote then. All those in favor of accepting and placing on file CPAH's Inclusionary Housing Ordinance Waitlist Report, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays, any abstentions? All right. Do we want to do F first or?
We could.
Yeah, let's do
Should
F
be
first. Quick. If there's no objection, we'll move. Somebody can make a motion for F. 7F.
I'll move for action, discussion, and vote to recommend approval of amendment to the HOME-ARP allocation plan.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been seconded. And do you want to?
Sure, yes. Yeah. So in April of 2021, the city of Evanston received a one-time allocation of $1,298,584 in HOME-ARP funds from HUD to support housing, shelter, and services to qualifying populations. This funding is separate from the city's regular home grant, and it has an expenditure deadline of September 2030. On May 22nd of this year, HUD notified the city of a $1,490 increase due to prior year under allocation. So staff's proposing to allocate the additional amount to administration and planning, raising the category's total from $148,584 to $150,074. This represents a very, very tiny increase of 0.054% in the admin and planning allocation. The overall HOME-ARP allocation plan would remain unchanged to $1 million that is designated for non-congregate shelter, acquisition and development, and $150,000 allocated to tenant-based rental assistance, TBRA. So the amendment ensures that we do a full use of all of the available funds released by HUD.
And so you need us, this is for action, so we need to approve this, right?
Correct, yes.
Are we good to vote? Everybody good? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right, and last but not least, we have 7E for discussion. I asked staff if they could put Envision Evanston 2045 on today for discussion because there's and I'm trying to find it in the, where can I find the language that talks about preserving, increasing? Where is that at again? Does it kick off chapter 10? Is that what it is? Yeah, it's one of the first policies in action. Is it? Oh, it's under policy statements, basically. Is that it? Okay. So it'll probably be helpful if folks pull this up if you don't have it already. Does everybody have this? And for context, and we'll do, if we could do another 30 minutes on this, I'll probably leave everybody with an assignment, which is to think even more on what we discussed in the next 30 minutes and to provide some comments to myself and staff and other council members because we're going to be discussing this at a special meeting, which is when? Next Tuesday. And so we'll love to, we'll try to fit as much discussion tonight, but I know we're going to run out of time. And so, but we still want your feedback. So just as a starter, I don't know if it's going to be Liz, are you going to be working with us? Or, okay. If you could just let us know what we're looking at right now, what document we're looking at, and, how we got to this draft.
Sure.
I think is a good way to start this.
Absolutely. So the document that was shared in the packet is essentially the Land Use Commission's recommendation that has been forwarded on to the City Council. So the initial draft of Envision Evanston was released in November of 2024. And the Land Use Commission started holding public hearings, received testimony from community members, and had robust discussion. That led to the creation of a second version of the plan, which was released in February of 2025. Additional public testimony was received. In addition, the plan was routed to several boards, commissions, committees for them to provide specific red line recommendations for the Land Use Commission's consideration. I believe Commissioner Thurston did attend some of the Land Use Commission hearings and translated information from the Housing and Community Development Committee for their consideration as they were deliberating on the plan. So this document here essentially encapsulates all of the amendments that the Land Use Commission has recommended based on feedback from the Environment Board, community members, our Preservation Commission. HCDC did not provide specific strikeout language that they recommended, but they did provide some feedback on that version 2 for consideration. So the different color coding kind of represents who these amendments were coming from. Green is from the Environment Board, dark blue is from the Preservation Commission, and light blue and purple is the specific Land Use Commission recommendations that have been made. So this now travels to City Council for their ultimate consideration. They're the determining body on it, and they'll be discussing it on June 24th and July 21st. Those are the two.
And the color code you just said again, you said blue is?
Dark blue is from the Preservation Commission. Green is from the Environment Board. And then light blue and purple are recommendations from the Land Use Commission.
The preserve and increase, I don't see that highlighted in any color. Is that?
So if you look on the screen here, Aaron's got it up for the commission. It's located under policy item 2. And
or is it a different area? Is it?
Yeah,
like, okay.
It's action 2.1.
It's the top of page 91.
Yeah. Okay, so it's listed under policies. So it's listed in policy statements in the beginning, but it's also in policies and actions. Okay.
Correct.
Because even in the statement, it says there's more information in there about what preserve and increase mean there's more information in the policy statement than there is in 2.1. And so, just to kick it off, that would be one question: is should that mirror what we have in the statement, or? So before we get into that, so the main reason why I wanted this back here is this: what we're talking about right now. There's been a lot of discussion about what this language should be, both in the policy statement, which I'll just quickly read that as I see it. In the policy statement, it says increase housing supply and housing choices. And then under 3, it says preserve existing housing stock. And there's even less direction, though, under 2.1, which just says preserve and increase Evanston's diverse housing choices. And so I think this was said in public comment that that doesn't really provide much kind of direction for council. It's like, what do we do with that? And so I think one thing I wanted this group to consider is, do you agree with that? Do you feel like not only 2.1, but any of this provides enough direction for council to consider? And if not, are there any recommendations that this committee has? Again, we'll run out of time this evening, but if you could take some time over the next few days to think about that and provide your opinions, I would appreciate it. Because again, what are we trying to preserve specifically? What are we trying to increase? I think if you ask Connections for the Homeless, folks like myself and others, I want to increase affordable housing units. I want to increase the amount of affordable units in this community, right? That's what am going to be advocating for. But that provides clear directions of just saying housing choices. What does that mean? Where are we talking about? The same thing with preserving is preserve housing stock. So just all the existing housing stock in Evanston we should preserve. That doesn't even make sense for future development. Things have to be removed and replaced, especially in a place like Evanston with limited land. So what are we trying to preserve? Is it homes in landmarked districts? Is it homes within 500 in landmark districts plus others outside of it within 100 or 500 feet? Like, what are we really talking about? And the less information we provide at this level, the more council honestly has to kind of come up with this on our own. And I think the way these committee structures work is we really want to hear from you, about how you feel and what you think, so that can inform our discussion at council. So, and then I wanted to allow some time for Sue Loback from Connections and Joining Forces, I should say, to kind of quickly walk through what their concerns are. It's a relatively short document, so I think they'll be able to get through it quickly. And then if there's any quick comments or questions for them, I'll entertain that. And then after they're done, I'll quickly go through some feedback that I received from members of the Here to Stay committee and kind of ad hoc unofficial committee that I chair. I'll quickly go through that. I'm going to also send that out to everybody. And again, we'll run out of time tonight, but take some time over the next few days and then please send your feedback in. So I wasn't watching the lights.
Can I just really quick, Chair?
Please.
Again, like everything he said, I just wanted to add a little bit more commentary.
Please, yeah.
When you look at the policies and actions, you mentioned that there's one policy around increasing housing supply, and then there's also housing supply and choices. That's policy number 2. And then number 3 talks about, I believe it's preserve existing housing stock. And then all of the sub-bullets underneath them are specific actions that the plan is recommending that the city take over the next 20 years. So I just wanted to say that the policy that was mentioned around preserving housing stock also has several different actions underneath it that would, in essence, try to accomplish that overarching policy goal. So I just wanted to provide that context a little bit as you have this discussion.
Yeah, no, that's very important. Thank you. And under 3.4, for example, develop a housing database to proactively monitor and preserve existing housing stock. Okay, I see it. There's some other language here, including vacant properties and the cause of vacancy. Okay, that's helpful. I thought it stopped at housing stock. Okay, who had their hand up first? Councilmember Hedikatis.
I'll be very quick because I'm going to get many more opportunities to talk about this. But personally, I think, especially from looking at like my immediate community and South Evanston, there is a housing crunch that we need housing at every income level. It's not just like affordable with a capital A. We also need attainable. There are plenty of folks who are still struggling that are, 2-income families that can't find a home, and it's, they're renting so I think the key piece for me, where some of the edits were increasing the number of units and was taking out, that kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. Like, I think there is a divide in town depending on where you live sometimes, and like, I know plenty of people who are struggling to find housing, and that's not a new thing. And in other neighborhoods, people think the situation's fine. So I think in order to accommodate more units, I think we have to be pretty explicit in that in this plan. And that's my one comment for this evening, but I'll just curious to hear what everyone else thinks.
I'll go quickly because it is really similar to what Councilmember Hardiker has to say. Yeah, I mean, I think when I appreciate the data here on sort of affordable housing needs, but it means different things to different people, and it also means attainable housing sometimes. It's not all, some of the demand isn't just for housing that qualifies on a certain income, on a set income sort of percentage. Is there sort of adequate housing of different sizes and different types that might just be more affordable to people wanting to live in the community? And so I was really excited to see in the initial draft, kind of specification of like what that missing middle housing could look like. And I think it's a missed opportunity to not include that kind of guidance in this draft. So, are we not going to specify townhouses, duplexes, cluster sort of cottages, courtyard buildings? These are types of housing that we've like traditionally had in Evanston. It's kind of part of our local heritage and culture. So I think it would be wise to include that explicitly in the guidance if it's something that the council cares about. I think that there are people in the community who do. This is just a question. And I think, and I agree with the speakers, about the point that you could also do this in a way that's sensitive to building envelopes and sort of kind of trying to preserve some of the shape and character of neighborhoods in terms of profiles and heights and what have you. The question that I have is just, I don't actually understand where the zoning comes from. So what actually happens after the council approves the comprehensive plan, which is kind of like a mission statement, right? So who's actually writing the zoning code, and who has intermediate say? That's the land use committee, is that right? And then the city council has final say. It would just be really helpful to know, because it seems like part of the issue here is the question of like who should translate a kind of necessarily vague guidance, but maybe one that could be tightened and clarified. Who's actually translating that into the rules that are going to be sort of followed and implemented? And then who's responsible for signing off on that? Because I think it makes a difference for how we think about these questions.
Absolutely. So just to provide a little bit of where we are in the process for Envision Evanston, the council originally, as part of this process, was this comprehensive plan and zoning code were coupled together. When the draft comprehensive plan and zoning code drafts were released, there was a conversation and direction provided by the city council to hold off on the zoning amendments at this time to allow the comprehensive plan to be finalized. So at this point, we will need to go back to the city council as staff once the comprehensive plan is adopted and placed on file to seek their direction on how they would like to reboot the zoning code piece of this process. So not to be dismissive of your question, who's going to be drafting it, that's an unknown at this point. The city currently does not have a consultant team that is working on the Envision Evanston project. process, so it's being led primarily by staff. And, you know, it will be a decision made by the city council as to whether or not they'd like to hire on additional staff consultant support to draft the actual regulations. In terms of process, once that is drafted, it would go through the same legislative process that the comprehensive plan went through. So it'll start with the city's land use commission. They ultimately will have to hold a public hearing. We will have to notify via postcard every single property owner in the city of Evanston, because this does impact every single property. And those public hearings will take place. They will make a recommendation ultimately to the city council. And then it follows the normal process of Planning and Development Committee and City Council for 2 readings. This would be both a text amendment and a map amendment as part of the process, at least how it was originally structured. So the council could decide that, you know, how they want that process to be conducted. So that's what information I have at this time.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I remember the initial zoning sort of proposal was tied in, but as I understand, we're not working with them anymore.
Correct. And the previous draft is no longer on the table. Right. So a lot of folks are still anchoring to that initial draft that was released. My understanding from City Council's direction is that they would want to reboot that process and start over.
So, okay, thank you. So I would just say, like, the very last thing, and then I want to sit back too, is just, you know, I think, again, just as you just pointed out, you know, given the scale of this effort, this is just going to be the beginning, even setting, you know, off, getting the comprehensive plan approved is still the beginning of the rezoning effort. Again, I would just reiterate, I think it would be a good opportunity to consider sort of larger scale, you know, like by right sort of gentle density, allowing for a little bit more sort of diverse housing types and gentle density across neighborhoods. So,
who was next? There's a light on over here. That's what I'm asking. Was this?
I don't have a light. Is my problem.
Was that you, Councilman Hadikadis? Oh, you okay? Did over here then?
I guess my question is, I don't know, and I can't remember everything that's in the Envision 2045, but, you know, I would hope, I assume that the council is going to be considering how much do they want Evanston to grow. I mean, I've heard like 7,000 and 7,000 population. Mm-hmm. Other people said, oh, our infrastructure can't, you know, handle too much more and so forth. So I guess overall, the council will have to, you know, consider how much do we want to grow. I mean, there are people who say everybody who wants to live in Evanston should live here. Well, I'm sorry, that just isn't possible.
Yeah.
And that everybody who works in Evanston should be able to live here, but a lot of people don't want to live here, you know. So anyway, so it's, there's so many things out there, but I think, you know, that's one big thing we have to consider.
Yep. Trina, did you have your light on? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, really, yeah, I appreciate that too. And I think that's right. The city council should be considering that question. But I think along with that, so like housing economists, when they talk about sort of where we should be thinking about infill and sort of density, they say it's sort of places that have underutilized infrastructure and capacity. And I don't know the answer in Evanston. I can speak for, you know, as a parent with kids in the school system, that seems to be underutilized. And so, you know, to that extent, there might be more, I would welcome more classmates for my kids. And, you know, I think that the schools do have a capacity issue. In terms of other types of infrastructure, you know, that, again, economists will point to transit infrastructure. We're pretty transit abundant in certain parts of, a lot of the city, but not everywhere. I don't know the other questions, but I just wanted to speak to that because I agree with you that that is sort of should be part of the question too, or the calculation.
Until people start having 8 kids again.
Well,
yeah, Mike.
You know, we're not going to increase the school population.
Well, but if we, you know, but again, there are families who want smaller, you know, it's hard for a family to afford like a 5,000 square foot house, but, you know, if there's a way to have sort of smaller square footage houses or say like small units stacked on top of one another, you know, that's like one way to increase sort of some affordability for families that might have children that might use the schools.
Yeah.
So just based on your question about population projections, as part of the first draft, there was some population projections provided. So taking a look at, based on CMAP's data, Cook County has experienced an average annual growth rate of about 0.05%, but from 2010 to 2023. And Evanston has seen a slightly higher growth rate of 0.35% annually, which the projected population would be about 84,175 people by 2045. So that is taking past trends in terms of population and extrapolating that over a 20-year time frame, and that's where that's being arrived at. That particular provision is no longer in the draft in terms of a population projection.
But with climate change, the Midwest is supposed to gain population, so we shall.
It's my understanding that that's one of the factors that is contributing to that potential increase in population, in addition to looking at the historic trends. And this is coming from CMAP, which is our regional planning authority.
You said that was removed from?
Correct. There is no longer any population projections in the draft.
And why is it?
It was part of the recommendations by the Land Use Commission as part of their process.
Yeah, I guess it's important, especially for council, to know what was removed, like, altogether and what's no longer here. I guess I assume that some of it was still here, but marked as, as something to remove by land use. So I would like to see anything that I would like council to see it, know everything that they've removed. Okay, so we'll take a little bit of time now. Sue, if you want to come up and just focus on maybe 3 or 4 most important things that you see. I'll kind of go over 3 or 4 from the Here to Stay committee, and then we'll adjourn. And again, we're gonna send forward all these documents. And if anybody else ever wants to, if anybody takes the time to, whether it's Connections, Here to Stay, or anybody takes the time to line by line come up with suggested changes, I will always give you an audience if we have time, because I want to encourage that. Oftentimes I feel we talk in the abstract. People use this as a soapbox to talk about kind of general theories that they have that they may have not even taken the time to really think through, especially to come up with actual solutions. And so anybody that takes the time to do that, you will have an audience as long as I'm chair of this committee. We'll do it in this fashion. I'll reserve some time at the end of meetings for you to come up to talk about your points. You can send it over to us as well, and it will be considered. So, Sue.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I would like to make the comment that Connections and Joining Forces provides our feedback to the city, with the city as a target for our advocacy. This feedback was not developed with the city, and it was not developed at the request of the city. So we are sometimes accused of sort of being part of the process. We are not part of the process any more than any other public commenter. So just want to state that. I've said some of this already in my public comment. We really support most of the recommendations related to housing. I mean, they're mostly all, good recommendations. Our primary criticism is that the plan does not make an increase in housing that is affordable, particularly to moderate and low-income residents. They don't make that an explicit goal. Data provided in the plan indicates that there's a severe shortage of affordable housing for people of moderate and low incomes. Additionally, increasing housing affordability is a goal of the City Council and a top priority that shows up in all discussions about improvements in the city. Therefore, our recommendations are around making an increase in affordable housing, not just preservation of the housing, making that an explicit goal, so that land use deliberations over the next 20 years can be guided to achieve that goal.
Real quick on that point, are you saying that, because it seems like it's somewhat in the policy and actions, and I'd love for you to review that again.
I will get into that.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to know if you're suggesting that there needs to be stronger language in that section, or are you saying we need to open up this chapter with stronger language about affordable housing,
Yeah.
so to be included in the introduction, the policy statements, et cetera.
Right. So, in my comments, I have things like under what we heard in the very first sentence, it currently reads, with Envision Evanston 2045, we aim to ensure that Evanston remains a thriving and inclusive community for people of all ages and abilities to live, work, and play. Our comment on that is that, if affordable housing, affordability for people at all levels of income is a priority, then that should say people of all ages, abilities, and income levels to live, work, and play. So that should be included. There's quite a few comments to that effect. I won't go through every chapter, every line where we mention it, but we do mention quite a few of those.
I think the income levels, because somebody mentioned, I think it was Councilman Hidakatis, maybe others, that it's at different income levels. Well, we should know what those income levels are. I mean, we just looked at one report that said, what was it? Let's say, 0 to 40% AMI is unserved, at least through our IHO ordinance program. We should say that in this, you know what I mean? Like, so we do have some data that can allow us to zero in on the kind of AMI levels that may be underserved in the community, and that could be 120% as well, or 100%. But we should figure out what that is, and then in my opinion, we should express that in the plan. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine. There are, I think, several areas where I think some statements that were originally clear became muddy as a result of some of the discussions that happened with the Land Use Commission. And so in Chapter 2, in a table of key takeaways, there's a sentence that says, some express support for creating a more neighborhood-oriented approach to zoning, while others expressed opposition, wanting a more flexible approach. And so I do not know what that means anymore. And if I recall, we believe it refers to some people really wanting neighborhoods to have sort of hyper-local control over what happens in their own neighborhood, while others would like rules that apply across all neighborhoods. And so I think we try to highlight areas like that in the zoning code, in this draft of the comprehensive plan, where we think the original meaning got blurred through the conversation. There are quite a few things in here. There's a bullet point in the same chapter under housing, currently reads, make space for affordable housing. This is the kind of thing that we feel really needs to be addressed in this plan. That phrasing is very weak. It really should say something like, create more affordable housing, or encourage or incentivize increases in housing affordability. Okay. So there are quite a few things like
probably
that.
have time for one more.
All right, let's
so make it a good one.
Let's get down to Chapter 10 then. Let me get there. So I think in the introduction to Chapter 10, there is the statement, maintaining both the diversity of the types of housing units available in Evanston and keeping them at price points that are within the means of all income groups is a key housing objective. It is important to explore ways to keep housing affordable at all income levels. And so my comment here is affordability needs to be an explicit goal in this chapter. It's a #1 priority in the community that needs to be reflected here. This chapter needs to state that it is the city's intent to increase the number of units that are within the means of lower income groups, both middle income and lower. And we need to do more than just explore ways to keep housing affordable.
Thank you. And we'll open up for one more round of questions and comments from the members, but I appreciate your time. I'm going to hold off on providing the feedback from here to stay, but I will forward that along to the committee, and any other information that the community would like to share with us But we'll open it up for, I know that I heard clicks this way, so.
I just wanted to uplift one of the other comments that was in the document that was shared with us that I thought was really interesting, which was under Chapter 7, getting around page 59, under parking, and the recommendation of language to be included was to assess all parking lots to determine which are underused and add them to the pool of plots potentially available for development of housing.
Yep. Thank you. Anybody else? Cool. Well, council is meeting on, one more time, on the 24th. You'll have a bit of time to review everything we send you and provide some comments. And again, what I would look out for is things that you believe what's absent from the housing chapter in particular, but you can go in other chapters. But we really love your feedback on chapter 10. But what's absent, what data, some of the comments from the Here to Stay committee focused on data that might be missing. So what data, could strengthen some of the policy actions in particular, and any other information that you think should be included, or just questions that you have as you're reading this, if you come up with different questions or things that need greater clarity. I think that's also what I've heard a lot. We heard it, one example from Sue, where you read it and you don't understand it. If you don't understand it, we probably won't either. And then we're going to make, probably the wrong assumptions about things. So I would say those are the areas in particular I'd love for this group to weigh in on. But seeing nothing else, it is 9:32, so we will adjourn the meeting. Appreciate everybody's participation tonight. Thank you. Have a good. And what is our next meeting again? July 17th. Okay. 15th. Mark your calendars. Thank you.